spiritual awakening to inspire your personal enlightened journey. I'm your host, Megan Mary, international best-selling metaphysical author and founder of Inner Realms Publishing. Let's bring in the light. Welcome. Today we have Margie Goldsmith. She is a world-renowned writer, journalist, and adventurer. She has lived a life defined by daring reinvention, not because she had an easy start, but because she refused to let hardship define her. She has been to 150 countries, on 7 continents, written 4 books, and garnered more than 100 creative writing awards. Her memoir, Becoming a Badass, From Fearful to Fierce, is an unforgettable and inspiring account of an extraordinary woman who has never allowed fear to stand in her way. Welcome, Margie.
Thank you so much.
Yes. It's wonderful to have you here today, and my first question I'm going to ask you is, what does enlightenment mean to you?
I think enlightenment means when you have given up on all the self-doubts, anxiety, depression that we go through every day, feeling less than, feeling not good, feeling that you haven't achieved as much as your friend or neighbor, and just being you and being satisfied with who you are right now.
Very good answer. And it really fits with what I was thinking about this morning. I was thinking about creating a meditation for women who do too much or who feel that they have to just continually do. And that is a lot of what you're speaking about in terms of productivity defining worth and letting others define our worth and keeping us from achieving because of fear.
I love what you say about letting others define our worth, because so many of us live our lives compared to spare.
Yes. So we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about what brought you to write this book after all of your incredible experiences. And also we're going to talk about spiritual awakenings and dreams that you may have had and how all of this ties together with the metaphysics of life. Let's put it that way. So where should we start?
Do you want to start with a very spiritual, metaphysical experience I had 3 nights ago?
Absolutely.
Okay. A very good friend of mine's husband had pancreatic cancer. He's been going through it for about 2 years now. And it just hasn't gotten better, but it hadn't gotten worse. And his wife and I and all his friends thought he would be fine soon, would finally recede. He'd been through enough chemo and radiation. And then his stomach hurt horribly. He went into the ER. It turned out that the cancer had spread into his stomach and his back, and he had very little time to live. So they took him out of the hospital, put him in home hospice. He was there 2 days, and on the second night at 3 a.m, I woke up and I saw him, Paul, in front of me, wearing a nice blue shirt and slacks and looking like the Paul I knew. And he said, "Margie, please take care of Marin, who's his wife." And I said, "Of course I will." I was not dreaming. I was wide awake. I checked the next day with 2 of my very metaphysical, call them, friends. And I said, "I wasn't dreaming? Was this real?" And they said, "Of course it was real. And this happens in life." And the only other time it had happened to me, and I think it's in my book, was I was married to my first husband. He was quite a bit older, and he was extremely abusive. And this time I think it was a dream. And my father came to me. He'd already been dead about 20 years. And he said, "Leave him. He's not good enough for you." And somehow that gave me the courage the next day to tell him that it was over. And that was as real to me as the experience with Paul 3 nights ago. So I do believe that there is an energy in the world. There's something universal that we can all tap into or taps into us because we need it.
Yes. And thank you for sharing those very incredible visitation dreams. They can be so powerful. And I've had those experiences myself as well. And they're just unlike any other dream stories, I'll call them, where it's very real, very much, I think, a spiritual encounter with the other spirits. And of course, we can interact with them in our daily life too, but we're so much easier and closer when we're in that sleep state, I believe. And it's amazing how the course of our lives can change by paying attention to them.
I agree completely. Except for my father, which happened, I guess, 50 years ago, or maybe 45. This was my first spiritual visitation since then. And it was a wonderful one. I had planned to take care of Marin anyway for the rest of her life. She's a very dear friend. But to see her husband looking healthy and fit the way he was when I knew him was a wonderful experience.
Yes. So, in your mind, I know that you had to overcome so many times where fear, looking back, you think, oh, and I got out of that situation and then I went to the next one and everything was, but of course it wasn't that easy. And every time had to be a very difficult challenge. And yet you rose to that challenge. What advice would you give or do you give in your book for listeners who are going through those life transitions and are facing all of the fears of who they think they are, what they're supposed to be, or what might happen if they totally change course?
Okay, I think there are two real kinds of fears. There's the anxiety fear of which you're speaking. I feel that I am not good enough for this and this. And then there's the fear which you face inside you because you came from a very traumatic childhood, as I did. I was brought up when I was 8. My mother said to my sisters and I, don't have kids, it's not worth it. And my great aunt had said, I feel so sorry for you kids. And I never knew what she was talking about. But we were brought up to feel very less than, and nothing was good enough. And I'm sure that most of your listeners, even if they weren't abused, somehow felt that from a parent or a relative or a sibling. And maybe there was one person in their life who encouraged them. In my case, it was my 4th grade teacher, Miss Drown. I'm sure she's dead now. This was so long ago. But I would write something and I'd be so proud. I was writing children's books when I was a child at 8. And my mother didn't even want to look at it, my father either, but I'd bring it into Miss Drown and she'd say, well, you must write. That's so beautiful. Just keep doing it. And I think what helps us is one person, whether it's a mentor or a friend, just somebody that you can rely on to tell you that, yes, you are good enough and you can do it. The way I think I escaped from feeling so inferior, I went to 13 schools before I graduated from college because they could never afford the house, but I think they were running away from life. I had a sister who was a schizophrenic. She would embarrass them. Both parents were alcoholics. My father was bipolar also. My mother was just wacko. Once we went to the building of the FBI, it was our only family trip. We had 2 family trips in my lifetime, vacation. And we were in this building and they're explaining about Dillinger and Al Capone. And my mother raises her hand and goes, did Dillinger have a license to carry a gun? And this was typical of my mother. It was always humiliating. She came into my 8th grade class and said, what are you doing giving this child an A? There are 3 misspelled words. And the teacher said, she's the only one who got it right about footnotes. It was all about footnotes. You don't give a person an A if they misspelled 3 years. She came in unannounced. So this was my life. My life was shame and humiliation. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners feel the same way. Maybe it's a spouse who abuses them mentally or even physically. But when you're in that kind of a situation, when you feel so less than, get out physically, remove yourself from that situation. I don't care if you can't afford to get divorced. If it's a spouse, just go, separate yourself. What I did was, as soon as I graduated from college, I saw this flyer from Columbia University. It said, go to Europe, $200 round trip. We go in May, come back in August. And I thought, yeah, I'm going. Student hostels, you could stay anywhere. It didn't cost much. So I left. And at the end of the summer, I thought, if I come back, I've graduated from college. I was supposed to either go to Yale and get a Master of Fine Arts or Columbia and get a Master in Comp Lit. And I thought, what am I going to graduate school for? I only wanted to write. And my parents had all said, oh, you can't write. You can't make a living writing. And I thought, my father had committed suicide a few years before. And my mother and my grandmother were both, you must do this, and you must get married. And why aren't you married yet? And why don't you have a boyfriend? And I thought, I'll just stay in Paris because they won't be calling me. It was long distance then. Long distance cost a fortune. There were no cell phones. There was no Skype. And so I knew that if she tried to call me, she was too cheap. So I stayed. I sent a little note back with some 12-year-old I met on the train and said, dear Mom, I'm staying in Paris. Suddenly she knew where I was staying in the little $3 a night hotel, 15 francs. What do you mean you're not coming back? I said, I'm going to stay in Paris for a while. What about grad school? I don't need to go to grad school. What are you going to do there? I don't know, but I'm just going to stay here. Are you in trouble? No, I'm not in trouble. Are you pregnant? No, I'm not pregnant. She couldn't understand why I wanted to stay. That alone was enough reason to stay. So I stayed, and that's where I began to develop confidence, because I didn't have a parent hanging over me criticizing everything I did. I think my grandmother was worse than my mother. You girls aren't half as good as your mother ever was. And it was just all negative. Get away from whatever negative energy there is. And if you have a child, take your child with you. Just find someone who believes in you. We have to believe in ourselves. And if we've got someone telling us that we're not good enough, or nothing we do is good enough, or nothing we say, and that we're either fat or we're ugly or we're stupid, whatever they're telling us, or we're crazy. That's what my first husband used to say, you're crazy. And it was very hurtful. Get out of there. That's my advice to any listener. And if you've just graduated from college, the job market is terrible now with AI taking over everything. Go away for a year. Go explore a foreign country. Just get away, get out of yourself, learn something new about another culture. Every other culture in the world respects their elders. So if you want nothing to do with your parents or your grandmother, you'll see families, you'll see happy families, especially if you came from a horrible one. So that's my best advice. Get out of whatever situation you're in and change it. I always used to say to my friends who refused to work out, move a muscle, change a thought. It's true, because if you're in a funk, you just get up and walk around the block. Then you can just change it and change your mind. So even better, get out completely and change your whole attitude about who you are and become who you want to be, who you are meant to be, who you dream about. Because if you dream it, it's going to happen. You can do anything you want to do, no matter how many people tell you can't. My motivation might not be yours. My motivation was because I was going to prove to them, I'll show you that I'm good enough, that I can do this. And most of my life I've spent proving to them. Now everybody's dead except one sister, and she loves me, so that's good. Proving to them that I am good enough and I can do it, and nothing you can do or say is going to stop me from doing it. And that's what I call being a badass. And that's really, to answer your other question, why did I write this book? For all those people like me who were told they weren't good enough. You are good enough and you can change your life. So do it, because I'm much older now than I used to be. I just turned 82. And as I see myself, I'm still 35 running marathons. I'm 40 running marathons, 60 running marathons. Now it's hard. Everything breaks down. But it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're 60, if you're 70, do it. And if you're younger, Do it too. It's not too early and it's not too late to just change where you are and how you feel, because then you'll become the person that you want to be.
If you are enjoying my podcast and are intrigued by dreams and stories of spiritual awakening, I would like to personally invite you to explore my international best-selling metaphysical trilogy, Witches of Maple Hollow. Like a mystical fairy tale, these fall-themed mysteries weave cozy supernatural fantasy into enchanting tales of magic and self-discovery. Start with Book 1, The Dream Haunters. The Book Life Prize calls it packed to the brim with surprise portals, ancient traditions, and dream worlds. Then dive into the elusive nature of reality in the Dream Mirrors. And finally, unravel ancestral riddles beyond time and space in the Dream Dimensions. Get your exclusive signed copies today at meganmary.com. Stop by the store while you're there and grab your dream journals, cozy blankets, pillows, candles, and more. And don't forget, they also are available in audiobook. Come visit me in Maple Hollow. Sage advice, yes. You really do have to take your life into your own hands and recognize that I talk a lot about reality being an illusion. And our minds create these cages for ourselves that we willingly stay in, that are comprised of our experiences from our youth, as well as what other people have said and judged around us. And so we create this compilation of truth that we think is reality, when in fact it's not, and that there's so many other options. There's so much more to this reality, and that we actually can recreate ourselves at any age and recreate what our life is. But we feel so trapped and so predicted. And I think really metaphysics in itself is a study of reality. And so it's questioning, what is it that I think I'm existing in? What is it that I believe to be true that's preventing me from doing what I would really like to be doing? And is that true? And so if it's not, what else is true? And that's where we can become those co-creators of our own reality, and understanding that we're not limited. And even that this human body is not the limit. And that we're actually spirits just having a temporary period in this biochemical suit.
I love that. I like, we're of the same mind.
Yes. So great minds think alike.
That's
And
it.
I get stuck just like anybody else. But the reason that I created this podcast is because I worked hard at that stage to unstick myself. I wasn't prepared to be on camera or be on social media or talk about these types of topics that general people don't talk about. And I was terrified of what would happen if I did. And I had to go through that, what some people call dark night of the soul, and face that and say, what if I did do that? What's the worst that's going to happen? And when I faced that, all of a sudden, everything changed. People started acting in ways I didn't expect. I started meeting people that were very supportive, that thought, of course, you're doing this. And I was like, no, you don't understand. It took so much to get me here. It was not an easy transition. But I believed in myself and in the value that I felt that I had to share. And also just in the calling too, because I really felt I had to be the voice for other women and create this platform for other women to come tell their stories, for other women to hear. And it just really felt like that was my service, and that in doing that, it was going to change lives.
I think that you have found the key to what makes you be you. Are those keys that you're wearing as
Yes.
earrings? See,
Yes.
you found two keys to your life. The key for
Yes.
you and the key for everybody who's listening.
Yes.
So,
Agreed. Yeah. It's something that happens when we step aside from ourselves. When we disassociate from who it is we thought we were and step into that more universal awareness. And that's where I think we start to tap into that. It becomes less ourselves and more the universal mind, which of course knows everything.
I agree with that completely. And there's a lot more to my story. Let's deal with the C word and the D word. D is not for death, D is for divorce, and the C is for cancer, each of which I've had 3 times. First, I had what's called a whipple, which sounds like, I thought it was something nuns wore on their head. No, that's a wimple. It's about a 6-hour operation. Not many people survive it. I remember going to see a doctor for something else about a month after my whipple, and he goes, "Have you had any surgeries recently?" I said, "Yes, I had a whipple." He said, "You had a whipple?" I said, "Yeah, I had a whipple." "You had a whipple?" I said, "I told you I had a whipple." He said, "Oh, it must have been a very good doctor." I was okay. And then it came back 2 years later, and they took out my entire pancreas, turning me into a diabetic type 1, which I had not planned on. And then 2 years later, it sneaked into my lung, and they had to take out part of my lower right lobe, but it doesn't affect my speaking. And I even play blues harmonica. I jam every Monday night, and I'm doing that. But
Wonderful.
let's talk about cancer, because you could say, "Oh, poor me, I have cancer. Isn't this awful?" Or you could say, "I'm going to beat this." I'm sure Paul tried everything he could. There are some people you just can't help it if it spreads throughout your body. There's nothing you can do. But if it hasn't spread throughout your body, if you have a positive attitude about your cancer, just as you do about your life, you're going to get through it a lot more easily. My way of getting through it was move a muscle, change a thought. I'd get out of bed, I'd do 1 lap in the hospital corridor. The next time I did 2, and I was eventually doing 14 laps. When I got home, I had to have a private nurse because it was bad. And we'd walk down the street, and I would do 1 more block each time. And that was true of all 3 cancer operations. So if you get the big C, move. Don't stay in bed, and don't feel sorry for yourself. You'll have enough people feeling sorry for you and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Just get up and move. And then the D word, as I said, it's not for death, it's for divorce. So I've been married 3 times. I'm glad I married each one of them. I learned a lot from each one. I would never badmouth any of them, but I'm glad I got out of all 3 marriages, because I think what happens is people meet and they're together, and you don't want to go out to dinner with another couple or on vacation. You just want to be alone. And then suddenly you're married, and the years go by, and you either grow together or you grow apart. And in all 3 instances, the reasons I had married them changed to who I was becoming. I was changing. They were staying who they were, the person I wanted to marry, but I no longer wanted that. So I divorced 3 times.
Yeah, you've had a lot of vast life experience. A lot of people maybe don't even do that once necessarily, having done it 3 times. And it just really makes you, as my father would say, rounded. It makes you understand so many different circumstances and people, and also with all the places that you've traveled and all the things that you've studied and been a part of. It's sometimes what happens just as we get older, but not necessarily, because some people do the same thing their whole lives, never question, they're on this loop and they're okay with it. And I think that in a way that's personality too, because some personalities are not seekers. They're consumers versus creators. Everybody has a role. And so that may be right for someone and not right for someone else. But this show is very much for seekers, very much for people that are looking outside the box, want to understand maybe what's beyond what they've been told. And that's where the Great Awakening comes. That's how we expand our consciousness by not just accepting
Right.
things.
I agree completely. I think my word for what it is to seek is just be curious, question things, ask questions. Don't be afraid to meet people. In my travels, yes, I've been to 150 countries, but it's not like checking them off. I've been to these countries and spent time in them. It's not like just passing by in an airport. And what to me is important isn't the beautiful churches and cathedrals and museums and great restaurants. It's the people. Wherever I go, and especially in third world countries, I want to try to communicate with the people. I couldn't when I was in places like Turkey and Mongolia. I could learn merhaba in Egyptian or kuzunzambo in Bhutanese, but I could learn how to say hello and thank you. But that wasn't enough to have a conversation. But there is a universal language, and that's music. Now, I only travel with a carry-on bag, even if I'm going to Africa. So I thought, okay, I need to take up an instrument. And I thought guitar would probably be easiest, but it's too big. You can't pack it in an overhead suitcase. And then I thought, what's small enough which looks easy? And I thought, this, a harmonica. Look how little it is. You can fit it right in your pocket. So I took up harmonica. I found out about a jam camp for beginners in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and I went when the cotton was in full bloom. And I learned how to play a couple of notes. Came back, found a teacher on Skype who I still take from. He's in Wales. You'd think, what does he know about the blues? Everything. I'm having a wonderful time with it. And now, when I go to a third world country, I get Honer, who's one of the great harmonica makers, to send me 30 harmonicas, inexpensive ones. I bring them with me, and I ask to meet a third or fourth grade class because they're at a perfect age. And I give them each a harmonica, and I just tell them to inhale and exhale. And there's always a translator who explains. And suddenly we're all making music together, and it's a bond. Or if I'm not in a classroom, I'll just sit in a park and play, and suddenly it's like the Pied Piper. I have all these kids around me. So I would suggest to anyone who's going to travel the world, find something that you can do to engage with the people. If you don't play an instrument or play a big instrument and don't want to take it with you. I saw someone do this in Bhutan. She would make these little origami boxes and give them to people. They were beautiful. The papers were like this big, and she'd make a little swan. There's so much you can do with very little, but a lot of creativity to endear people to you and have a way of communicating with them. Because for me, all the travels are about my experiences with the people. I'll tell you one, because there's so many wonderful stories. I was training for a marathon. I was in Atlas Mountains outside of Marrakesh, and there was a hill right outside this resort. But I needed to get my mileage in. So I throw on some running clothes, and I run down the hill, and I see these two women who are kind of laughing at me. And I know they're waiting for the bus. So I go down the hill, truckloads of men are passing by. It's time to get out of work. And they're laughing and pointing, and I ignore them. I run down the hill. Now it's time to run back up the hill. Running up the hill, and suddenly the two big women come at me. And at first I'm thinking, what are they doing? And they grab my hand. They pull me. They want to run with me. So the three of us run up the hill together. And they're wearing those little funny slippers with the pointed toes and their long jalabas or whatever they're wearing. We run up the hill together, screaming at the top of our lungs and laughing And we'd get up to the top of the hill and they'd have this wonderful cry in Arabic, which is something I can't even do it. And they're screaming and we're laughing and we're hugging. Now, this probably happened 20 years ago, but I can still feel them and hear them and remember how much fun it was. So it's the unexpected, which always is the most fun. I'll tell you one other story because it's just fun. I was in Bhutan. I was with a group, an outward bound group, at Adult Invitational. We were on a trekking trip and we were going up this trail, and it was a little dirt path, and it was their main highway. And so we'd be passed by these herds of yak trains who'd be pulled up with bells, and you'd get to the side of the road terrified. And then the Indian Army with these big boxes on their backs carrying up rum for the winter. And then a mother came by pulling a pony with two little twins, 2-year-old twins. They all have these red apple cheeks. And I was just so happy. I'm not the fastest hiker like the alpha males, and I'm not the slowest hiker. So I'm usually hiking by myself. And I'm by myself when suddenly this whole group of school kids come. They're probably about 10 years old. They're pulling on my clothes, they're holding my hand, and they start to sing to me in Bhutanese. And I don't know the words, but I know the tune, which I remember from Girl Scout camp, which is, do your ears hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? And I had learned it with these expressions. So then I sang it to them in English with the expressions, and then we sang it together, me in English, them in Bhutanese, with them doing the expressions. They followed me all the way to camp, holding hands, fighting each other, who gets to hold my hand. And it was so moving. When I got to my tent, they did not want to leave. They all wanted to crowd into the tent. The instructors kicked them out. But it was that, too, I remember as clear as it was yesterday. And it's those unexpected experiences which just support you and make you feel empowered and compassionate.
Yes, those are wonderful stories. Yeah, and it really breaks down those barriers, the language barriers, the cultural barriers, all of the, even the human barriers, where all of a sudden we start to see the hints of that universality. We start to recognize that we really do have a lot of the same experience, even though we're living in totally different countries and different language and wearing different clothing, and we're just, everything seems so quote unquote foreign. But on the other hand, there is this resonance and this understanding that goes beyond that. And that's where we really are spirits communicating. And we're communicating at a different level. Because if you think about frequency and vibration and resonance being those, according to Tesla, secrets of the universe, that's what music is. And that's also the levels that we can reach each other at that surpass all these other restraints that we've learned. Beautiful stories to demonstrate how possible that is. So for those that are interested in checking out your book and all your other offerings, your harmonica playing, where can they find you?
I think the best thing is to go to my website, which is www.margiegoldsmith.com. And that has a whole little link to my book, which is called Becoming a Badass From Fearful to Fierce, which you can get as an audiobook or Kindle or as a paperback. And it'll have a lot of my articles there, so you can take a look at them. And I think there's a link to my 2 albums. I wrote and sang and played harmonica on 2 albums with America's greatest blues band, Rick Estrin and the Nightcats. So I flew out there to their little studio, and it's fun. I did it just for fun. I think I do everything for fun now, because life is
fabulous. Fun. That's a fabulous perspective. Yes. Thank you for sharing that in your stories, in your books, and I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes so that everyone can check them out. So thank you very much for being here today, Margie.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so glad we're of exactly the same mind about things.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode? You can now send me a text message and share your experience. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well to be part of my growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the new Dream Empowerment programs. Unique opportunities for you to unlock your inner wisdom, discover your authenticity, align with your higher self, and bring abundance into your life. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit meganmary.com to find out more.